Last year, when I was doing my stuff, I went down a rabbit hole after I was in the lens based class, and we did a thing on the start of Saving Private Ryan, the first 25 minutes, and how the way it had been shot, and that, you know, with such a narrow aperture, there's only 45-degree aperture. You know, that look, that it had that incredibly immediate and uncomfortable look.
And close.
And that got me thinking and worrying. I worried. If it was a 45-degree shutter, i.e. 1/8 of a revolution,
yeah,
what happened in the other 7/8 of the revolution? Was there a different film there? And was there... So I actually wrote to 28 different people, all sorts of different people, philosophers, camera assistants, DPs, directors, designers, theatre directors, just all kinds of writers, all kinds of people to ask them. And I got a bunch of fascinating answers.
And these are all from your contacts?
Yeah, people I'd known. Well, some people not so, well, I only knew him vaguely, but he was like, don't have time. Simon, what's his name, the School of Life, the Swiss English philosopher bloke who had the... Yes. Yeah. And it was... I just got really interesting bunch of replies, you know, from you have way too much time on your hands to ask me this, to people like really delving in, and some from a technical point of view, and others from, you know, a philosophical point of view, and others from an artistic point of view.
Yeah.
And I found it really, really rewarding to do it, and I collect them all together. And so a few weeks ago, I thought, you know, I should talk to everybody about, because I don't have a background in art history, I should talk to everybody who is anybody to me in what I'm doing, and ask them what is the place of video in art, and why is it there, and where's the line for what is and what isn't. And I'm not for one moment thinking there's a correct answer to any of these things. It's collecting different people's opinions. Like yesterday I spoke to someone who's a playwright, a friend of mine who's a playwright, plays in the West End and what have you, and he's like, well, video's not art, is it? I'm like, well, that's why we're talking, you know, and we went there. I spoke to Jane Thorburn a week ago, who produced director of that show Alter Image back in the 80s, the thing, and she was quite interested. You know, she's like, well, you know, video, we were very separate from the film people. You know,
maybe
so
the video has also been tarnished in part by the idea of the pop video, and it became this sort of generic idea of video being somehow instant add water and mix, and not like film. And
which by the way, I've always thought was a lot of bollocks. Yeah. Having worked with the thing, to me, like when I had.
But I think that's part of the
yes,
sense it's perceived.
It is, but everything's on video. Yeah. Everything got transferred to video eventually, and in fact now everything's just a file.
And also, there's an inevitability of the progress and the idea, because it's digital technology.
Yeah.
I guess with video as well, there's a sense in which it's never an index of truth in the same way that film or old analogue photography was, because you couldn't play around with it. It's much easier to airbrush digital stuff, well, it certainly is now, than it was with analogue.
You see, I don't know. You see, that was where it was interesting talking to Jane Thorburn, and her saying, you know, that they were always looked down on the film people. The film's always been being altered and what have you, and combined and matted and stuff. The first video that she used, which was called what was it called? It was the Sony whatchamacallit pack. Is it Video Pack? Something pack. It was a Sony camera. It came out very late 60s. Junior Pack used it. A load of the students, Jane Thorburn had been a student artist at the Royal School and what have you. And the thing about that video was you couldn't even edit it. So you could shoot it and you could play it back. It was not locked enough to be able to do edits. Yeah. There wasn't an 8-field sequence or anything going on. It was just purely a recording. And the whole snobbery thing about film and video...
Must have taken up a hell of a lot of memory. Almost like a raw image on the camera. So it
Well,
wasn't.
it was on a video. It was on videotape.
But it, a videotape, yeah. So it's those small videotapes used to stay in
Yeah,
there,
so it
the
was
old thing
small. You know, it was probably only
Yeah.
430 lines resolution, like
Yeah.
old British black and white was, or what have you. But you know, I always had this thing with when designers joined Superfad and they wanted to move up a bit, or I'd be like, well, okay, well, go make something. Just go make something. Show me what you can make yourself. And they'd be like, oh, I'd like to, but you know, we don't have a big enough crew. We don't have enough lights. And I'd be like, what do you mean? If you've got a great idea, all right, just go out and shoot it on your phone. Oh, the quality of that. I'm like, no, what are you talking about? It's nothing to do with the quality of the image. That's not going to make your idea better. Your idea is either a valid idea or it's not. It doesn't matter what you shoot it on. You can shoot it on the best thing in the world. If it's a crap idea, it'll still be a crap video that you're going to make. So go show me. And a lot of them were scared. Some of them were just, and they're the ones who moved on to art director and then eventually creative director and stuff. But there's this fear, this kind of like hiding behind thing. And I also feel it like with that. I don't quite know, why is there a snobbery about film? When I moved to the States in the 90s, the post house that I worked at there, first of all, offered a service to people where if you shot video, you could send your video in, which had been shot at 30 frames per second, and they would drop a bunch of frames out, then add pull down back in, and they would recolor correct it, and they would make video look like film, supposedly. Never did to my mind, all right, but that's like jerkiness that film has compared to thing. And then when you put it on TV with the pull down that, you know, was reusing fields and what have you, it gave it that slightly odd look, and like people were snooty and wanting that. And now kids want as many frames per second when they're gaming, and they want 120, 240 frames per second. The exact opposite. Anyway, I've talked, and it's not about me, it's about you. Why is there a snobbery about film and video? Where does video sit in art?
I think it's probably got something to do with authenticity and the directness. You know, I was there and it looked like that. I was there when I filmed. It that's what it was like. In a sense, it's directly connected to its subject in that it's got to be there.
It's a physical.
You've got to be engaged.
medium.
There's a physical presence. There's a physical connectivity.
Chemical reaction as well.
And
yeah,
it's there, and the light. You know, the light is there. So there's this temporal and physical connectivity. Whereas with digital, it doesn't have to be there in quite the same way. Perhaps it does, you know, when if you could still shoot something, but maybe it doesn't, because the thing can be duplicated. The thing can be, you know, we've got things like video enhancement. There's all sorts of things that you can do, and AI. You know, you can't do AI with film in the same way that you can with digital. So there's a sort of sense in which it's to do with authenticity and authenticity carries with it a certain degree of it's something to do with experience, realness, and maybe that's where the snobbery lies. If it is, I'm not sure it's snobbery. Maybe it comes out of a sort of fear of something that's not real, and something that might take over. Maybe there's a thing that we now fear with AI, that it's actually going to take over our. You know, the way we run and experience our own lives. You know, that's a fear, because it's an unknown thing, and it is unknown. So maybe it's probably quite complex, but I think it's to do with authenticity. I think that's where the snobbery in a word.
So where does video sit in art then?
Well, how do you mean? Where does it sit in art? There are lots of video artists now working with video and art, and it's.
And is it as valid as any other medium?
I don't see that it's not invalid. Yeah, I mean, the thing is, I think even with people, you know, of yours and my generation, we've grown up with film. We've grown up with a moving image, and so it's not that dissimilar. So it's like saying, well, you know, North by Northwest isn't art, but of course, a lot of film people might say, oh, actually, Hitchcock's great movies. Yes, of course, it's a work of art. And in a way, I think we're just going down the same thing. I just something's not art just because it's video, but I think there are plenty of great things probably done. Most films now are shot digitally. You know, most films, and even low budget films, especially low budget films, are shot, you know, sometimes on an iPhone. think of something like Blair Witch Project or all sorts of interesting,
Yeah.
sort of slightly peripheral things are done digitally. And in a sense, now celebrate the sort of, almost like the notion of the handheld, which was actually, weirdly enough, the origin of the original films. Were the fact is that a camera could be, you could hand hold a film camera. It's like Men with a Movie Camera, the Vertov. It's the idea of being there, and so there's a sort of sense in which perhaps the digital can have it both ways. It can have the it's got all the sort of panel post production, and all the sort of there's a range of effects and makeup that goes with that, but also it's slightly peripheralised because people make films on their iPhones, and that's a great sort of. I think it opens things up. It's democratising. I think.
Oh yeah.
It's just like the Kodak camera was democratising. So I think it does have a place, and a very broad place culturally.
Where here's something that I've been trying to understand in a way, maybe probably in as much as anything, because my parents sort of asked me and don't quite understand where fine art starts and finishes. What is fine art? And so then it makes me question whether I actually know what that is too.
Well,
I mean, where
I don't know.
what is art? What is not
I don't
art?
think it really has a boundary, does it? I mean, and especially as a place like this, and we tend not to silo. I personally try not to silo practice and say, well, it's like saying, well, such and such is or such and such person or a practice is painting, such and such is sculpture. I don't think it's quite as clear cut as that. And video just falls in the same bracket. Fine art itself, I don't think it's very difficult to demarcate. I mean, it exists in the fashion world, it exists in film. I think it's a real, and I think quite rightly, it's a very shifting term. And fine art, and if you say you're an artist, it's one of the few terms, a bit like priest, that's not been secularised in the way that, say, a writer has been secularised through media, through newspapers, through paperback writing. It's become understood as such. But if you say in let's push the writing thing a little bit further, writer might have been secularised, but the idea of poet is not. People can't pin down what poets do. Well, what do poets do all day? Well, what do artists do all day? Artist is similar to poet. It's not been secularised. It's slightly unquantifiable. It's not professionalised. So you can't quite pin it down. And fine art is like that. You can't quite pin it down. So I don't think it does have borders.
I think your average middle class person who sort of is aware of it a bit, but not a great deal, or has some interest in it. You see, I think for them, it's drawing and painting.
Sure.
And then anything beyond that is something else.
Yeah.
And so that's why then I'm like, okay, well, video is definitely further along the line from that, but I'm with you. I think it's a very broad line, and the reason why poetry and music and fashion, like you say, and film and all manner of things can't be.
I mean, I do think if you're dealing with something that essentially from a sort of standing start doesn't make money, then you've got to have a way of supporting that in order to do it. Then you either have to go out and do a job to do that, or you need your own means. So in a sense, that's why the idea of artists, and actually if we look at the art world today, lots of artists who are successful in the art world come from usually upper middle class, and certainly gallerists come from upper middle class backgrounds or people with money. So there is a direct connection. So in a sense, the idea of the poet and the artist, while essentially being open to all, we still need to live and make money, and we still need to support that. So there's a sort of sense in which they also become very privileged positions as well. So to go into the priesthood, you almost like being a lawyer. You need to have a secondment and be. It's not straightforward. So because people have to make money or have money in order to do it. So, yeah. But it doesn't stop. I think if you're got a real yen for making art, I don't think it's being from that social background or having the need to make, because the jobs that artists do to make, to make ends meet. It's a bit like the ragged trousered philanthropists, selling Robert Truscott selling himself short. They're the guys for, they're always just giving time away for free because they never got paid enough for what they were doing anyway. So, and there are lots of artists like that who've done all sorts of jobs just to keep themselves afloat, just to pay the studio rent, and artists who are still doing that now, and just making art because it's a pathology, they have to do it. It's almost like an illness. It's a need, and it's got purpose. It gives life purpose, and I think that's ultimately why.
And what is that purpose?
Oh, it's like religion. It's a sort of sense of being in the world, sense of where you fit and what's important. You can't quite say what it is, but in the scheme of things, it's important. So, if you say, some people, family might be important, and knowing something about their family history, and in a sense you trying to unscramble something, because I think there is an element of unscrambling in your memory project. By doing that, by engaging with it, you're saying the idea of heritage in some way is important, and family is sort of important. Well, I think in that same way, I think artists who pursue an art career, who have this necessity to make art, it's like a sort of it's like a belief system. It's like almost like a religion, where they have to do it because it's purpose. It's full of meaning and purpose. I think that's really simple, but it's, for me, that's the case. I need to do it. I need to have this outlet.
And does it need to say something? To have a commentary on something?
I actually don't think it. I don't think you're set out necessarily to say something, but inevitably it does say things that you don't necessarily. There are there are consequences to what you do that you can't always predict, unforeseen consequences, and I think, and there are also unforeseen results that happen with art, and in a sense the art dictates its own terms. As soon as there's one thing having a blank piece of paper on the wall, but as soon as you start drawing on it, that drawing will start dictating the terms of its own making, and you can't really foresee that. So you can't just say, well, I'm going to make art about such and such. It doesn't work like that. Of course, there may be issues behind why you're doing the work, but there'll be a sort of sense in which the work will take its own life anyway. I think you can't always predict it has a life of its own, if that makes sense.
And where, something I do think about, having initially thought I was interested in video, but then really realising that it was more, video was a part of kind of either an installation or almost performative thing. Where is the outlet for artists like myself? Where do you go after school? Who's going to buy a video installation?
Yeah, I know.
Who's going to?
Yeah.
What do you do with it? Where would it go?
It's almost like, and also, I mean, it's a dematerialised art object. Sometimes it's the idea that's the important thing, and artists, there's always this problem of, do we need to make more stuff in the world when there's enough stuff already? But artists do like. I know I like to make objects, and sometimes if you don't sell them, you've got to store them, and that you often get a storage problem. Your studio can become like storage. So it's a perennial problem of making stuff. But that's not to say it's just stuff. It's stuff it's stuff plus. It's got things embedded in it, and it can still have a life. It can still be activated by going out in the world or being part of a show. Or I'm invited to be part of shows. Sometimes I was invited to be one part earlier this year, and I put some works in that. It was a group show, and the work became animated again. It was really nice to see. It's like watering a seed. It will suddenly sprout up. So I think there's a way of looking at your art, art is like, sometimes if the storage that is, it's like seeds, and it's like an incubation chamber, and these things, when the conditions are right, they'll suddenly go, and you'll have a forest of meaning that comes out of the things that have been incubating, and that might be your work that's just laying in storage, or it might be also your ideas can incubate.
Well, I like that. I really like you haven't gone there, because I was thinking that all the things that I've done in the time that I've been here, which is 2 years now, some bits I've still got, some bits sort of,
Yeah.
I don't know where they are,
And
whatever.
they'll might resurface.
But they all help me get to here, to
Yeah.
where I am now, and hopefully beyond. Hopefully I don't run out of ideas here or something. But you know, so they felt like they had a purpose, if nothing more than that.
Also, I mean, these ideas that you talk about, they all come around, or they're sort of fed, they're given oxygen by having conversations, but with others, and that's the important thing. Knowing you're part of a brotherhood or sisterhood. I mean, I like to call paintings as the brotherhood of the brush, and there's a sort of sense in which if you can have meaningful conversations, it oxygenates and aerates and allows the practice to grow and develop. It always comes out of conversation.
Bearing in mind how important the conversation bit is, and I really do think it is. Like, every opportunity I've had to take a tutorial, I've taken, and asked for more from other people, from other courses, from Dominic, for anybody, just because I'm fascinated to talk to smart people, to people who know more than me, to people who can help.
And they'll know different.
Absolutely.
Just different things, but not more, but just different.
So why isn't there more emphasis in the course on us sitting around and talking to it? We have seminars, but that's on the theory side. We have tutorials, but that's obviously a tutorial is an individual thing. But we don't have sort of group chat.
Well, don't ask me, it's not my course.
No. But I'm just wondering, I wonder why...
I think that's quite normal, and I think these group chats you're describing, I mean, they should happen anyway. And they shouldn't be programmed. So the question shouldn't be, well, why isn't the course doing? Because I don't think it's something the course should do. It should just happen.
Okay, if that sounded like a criticism of the course, it wasn't meant that way.
Yeah.
I guess it was. I wonder why.
No,
I wonder why we don't spend more time as a group talking.
I don't know. I think it's sometimes some people do spend more time than other people. Some it just happens. It goes in waves. Yeah, I mean, it's great to sit around and talk, have a nice. I mean, I think this year, as years go, is not bad. I think you seem generally quite talkative and supportive of each. That's the impression I get. I might be wrong, but that's the impression I get, that you do talk to each other more.
I certainly don't feel like we dislike each other or something, which is would be the opposite of that, wouldn't it?
But I'd encourage the more you talk, and the more you talk with undergrads, and just like you're talking to Dominic, just do it. So it's seeing you at 2:00, I think.
Yeah.
On which note, I think I should
go and get some lunch.